Hello.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
It is going pretty well. Um, Gosh, yeah, it's been quite the week. I'm a little bit sleep deprived, but I'm fully present and excited to be here. Yeah, just making a move, and now I'm in my new state of North Dakota. Woo!
Yes. Sorry, we don't disclose personal information in this podcast, so for all we know, Sunny's in France right now. Hi all, welcome to Scary Talk episode 67. Wait, 68? We're one episode away from
68!
69, dude.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna be
We
celebrating.
we still gotta settle on what we're doing for that. Like, this is serious. This has to be special. Hi all, welcome to 68. This is Andre and Sunny. We're about to spook you today. We have some good stuff for you. Today we are doing a horror movie analysis. So we're doing a part two to the first horror movie analysis episode we did a couple of weeks ago. But first, I'm glad you're okay. Sucks that you're tired, but let me talk to you about this for a second. So you know how we talked about Britney Spears last week?
Wait, I was literally about to say the same thing. We were so
You
on
go.
it.
No, you go. You go.
Well, just that we literally like gave a prophecy. Like we're talking about supernatural things that like social media blew up with Free Britney stuff this week, which was really cool.
I know. Did we catalyze that? What like did we like send out the psychic energy to millions of people to suddenly care about this? Because I've seen so much stuff since we first talked about it. I don't know if we like caught it while it was still like like barely like growing from the bud or something. Like who knows?
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
Psychic
it's
energy strong.
I guess so. Yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff about that. I mean, I'm glad to see that because it's good to know people care about this because I think our queen is actually in a truly dire situation for real.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, just an update. Everyone, hashtag Free Britney. Look it up on Instagram. Look it up on Twitter. It's happening. It's blowing up. Be a part of it.
yes.
Yep. So anyway, we don't have much updates for you guys this week personally because the world is in standstill and nothing is happening. So
Literally.
beyond freeing Britney from her prison cell, we're just gonna give you horror movie analysis. So if you're all ready to step into this, so are we. Let's do this. Sunny, would you like
Yes.
to start us off with one of the movies that you're talking about today?
Oh, absolutely. So I'll go ahead and start off with a fan favorite and a personal favorite, Shutter Island. So this is more of like a psychological thriller, I would say, than pure horror. It's got a couple jump scares here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But it was released in 2010. It was directed by Martin Scorsese, who's really big. I don't think I pronounced his last
I
name
think it's
correctly.
Martin Scorsese.
God.
Martin Scorsese's his evil twin brother.
Martin Scorsese, I'll get that, who's a really big director and has done a lot of cool things from what I can gather. So, do you think I should go into a plot summary first? Would that be helpful?
Yeah. Also, who's in this movie?
Okay, so it stars Leonardo DiCaprio. Um, let's see here. Who else is in this movie in terms of casting? It's
Actually, I don't
got
remember anyone else in that movie.
I mean, he is like definitely the main guy. Oh yeah, and the other guy who kind of stars with him is Mark Ruffalo,
Oh,
opposite
okay.
Ben Kingsley, big psychiatrist guy who famously played Gandhi because I think he's like a quarter Indian and white
Oh
passing, but we
yeah,
don't
yeah.
talk about that. um, but yeah, so that was our cast there, a couple of hunks. And it kind of starts out on this huge ship, and you see Leonardo DiCaprio puking and looking into a mirror and saying, like, pull it together, Teddy. And he goes out and he's introduced to his new partner. And you find out that they're both U.S. Marshals and they're being sent to this island to investigate it. And you go through the movie and they're investigating what we soon come to name as Shutter Island. So Shutter Island is a mental health or a mental hospital for people who have done violent things specifically. And
Hmm.
as they go in, they meet Ben Kingsley, the head psychiatrist guy, who actually espouses surprisingly compassionate philosophy about his patients. He's the one saying, like, we're here to take care of them, we're here to rehabilitate them, and you find our main character, Teddy, who seems to be a pretty angry, hardcore guy. He's a war veteran. Teddy is kind of skeptical of that. So this psychiatrist, Ben Kingsley, is talking about, we have one patient here who murdered her 3 children. She drowned each of them. And so we're going to go talk to her we're going to go into her room because she's disappeared, actually, and we need you to find her. And then Teddy's like, I don't know, do we need to find her? Should we just, that's so terrible, He's got a very clear stance on these perpetrators of violent crimes, which is that, why are you just letting them off and trying to take care of them like this? They did terrible things. And he's flashing back, because he's a World War II veteran, to a Nazi camp, a Nazi death camp, where he went, and he basically went as part of the army, and it's slowly revealed that they lined up all of the officers who were Nazis against a fence, and then the U.S. soldiers essentially shot them, and he's quoted saying, that wasn't war, it was murder, and he clearly seems to feel a little bit of guilt about that. So it's this interesting parallel where he has gone and shot all these people who have done terrible, terrible, violent things, and he flashes back to seeing piles of bodies and stuff too. But now he's at this mental hospital with all these people who have done terrible things, who obviously are not being lined up against a fence and shot, despite having done terrible, arguably unforgivable crimes. Mm-hmm. So we have this interesting setup here, and the storyline gets more fascinating when you find out that the woman who's disappeared, that Teddy and his partner are looking for, as it turns out, her room was locked from the outside. She doesn't have windows she can access. Both of her pairs of shoes are still inside. She escaped barefoot? It seems impossible. And so they're investigating it, and a lot of spooky stuff happens. They interview a lot of the patients, and one of the patients, this is a really cool scene, is looking at Teddy and his partner, and she's describing Dr. Sheehan, who's apparently the missing patient's doctor. And as she looks at them, she's like, hey, can I get a glass of water? And while Teddy's partner is going to get it, she grabs Teddy's notebook, writes something in it, and hands it back to him. And later we find out that what she wrote was just 3 words, run, outlined really intensely. And you see some more interesting things from Teddy's viewpoint, where he's interviewing patients, and the patients are some are more, what's the word for something that you can, more amiable, not amiable, digestible than others, I guess is the word. So one of them he's interviewing, and this guy is like, yeah, a nurse tried to give me a glass of water, and I could tell she wanted me to whip my dick out, which freaked me out, so I stabbed her. and Teddy gets really pissed off at him, basically, and is talking to that guy, you're talking about stabbing her and being scared of her. Well, she probably had a family, and you stabbed her. What are you talking about, There's this big line drawn between the sane and the insane in this movie, between the people who can see reality for what it is and the people who can't, is what you start to see develop. And the plot continues to develop, and Teddy's coming on more and more strange mysteries on this island. He meets this random doctor while he's alone out in the cliffs, who is telling him about how she's an escaped doctor because they were doing psychological experiments on their patients and stuff. Until it gets to an end scene, and this is the biggest spoiler I can give, so if you, for some reason...
the biggest spoiler you can give. We're spoiling the whole movie, Sunny. Hello.
I mean, yeah, exactly. I was like, I should pause at least at this point, because this is the actual, crux of the movie.
Spoiler alert, everyone. There are spoilers. There you go.
Finally, he is in the main psychiatrist's office. He's freaking out because his partner has disappeared. He's like, what's going on? What are you guys trying to do to me here? Are you trying to, hold me as a patient and trick me so that you can do experiments on me? And basically the psychiatrist dude lays out for him, hey, so actually you've been a patient here for the last 2 years. Your name isn't Teddy, it's not Daniel Edwards the way you think it is. Your name is actually Andrew Latus, and those are apparently not anagrams, but that thing for each other where they're made of the same letters. And so our main character, Teddy, or as we now know, Andrew, has unconsciously renamed himself. Mm-hmm. And he unconsciously renamed his wife as well, because the missing patient, who was eventually found, is actually being charged with the crimes of his wife, which is drowning 3 children. He apparently had 3 children with her that he didn't remember. This is a psychiatrist telling him this. Andrew, remember your 3 kids that you had with your wife. Here are photos of them. Your wife drowned them, and you killed her. And then it goes back to the scene that shows Leonardo DiCaprio doing some incredible acting, while he realizes that his wife, who has for a long time been struggling with mental health issues, has drowned his 3 children. He has to pick up his 3 children out of the lake next to their house and bring back their bodies. And then when he's talking to his wife, this is a really fascinating scene. She's crying to him. She's like, "Oh well, we'll like bring them inside and dry them off, and we'll have dinner with them, and we'll go on a picnic tomorrow." And then for a second, she looks at him and she goes, "Let me free." And then she goes back and she's like, "Come on, like, we'll just bring them inside. It's all gonna be fine." And he shoots her, is what he does, while they're hugging, which is really interesting because she has just that moment where you're wondering whether that might be clarity or what that is when she says, "Let me free," which is foreshadowing because as we get to the end of the movie, we see not Teddy, but Andrew. His mind has finally cleared. He's accepted the truth. He's talking to them. And the doctor tells him, "Well, I just hope that you don't regress again because we had a moment of clarity from you about 9 months ago. And then you started to do all the same things and continuing to pretend you were this different person." And so in the last scene, and this was a big plot point too, is that they were going to lobotomize him. There was this last experiment where they wanted to see if they could clear his mind and things would be okay. Otherwise, the more like non-forgiving psychiatrists at the facility were leaning towards lobotomizing him, whereas the main psychiatrist dude he's been dealing with does not want to. And in the very last scene, his partner comes and checks on him and goes, "Hey, what's up?" And Andrew turns to him and says, "Well, I guess we gotta get off this island, going back into his U.S. Marshal persona. And you see his partner give a little nod to the big psychiatrist guy, or actually not a nod, the opposite. He shakes his head a little bit like, oh no, he hasn't maintained his sanity, he's not clear-minded. And the surgeon starts to walk towards them with the lobotomy tools, and the more violent warden who tends towards wanting to lobotomize the patients is coming as well. And while they're walking, this is like the most iconic scene of the whole movie. Andrew turns to his partner, who he's been closest to the whole movie, who turns out to be his main psychiatrist, and he says, let's see, "Which would be worse, to live as a monster or to die as a good man?" And then he turns and he goes to join them, and his partner's like, "Wait a second," and he calls out, he says, "Teddy," but he's already walking away, which I thought was really interesting. And here we get into some actual analysis, because throughout the movie his partner refers to him as boss, which is kind of weird when they're both partners, It's a very clearly like, I'm affirming you and your knowledge to make you feel more comfortable, like psychiatrist move, to be like, "Hey boss, what's going on?" Like,
wait, so basically at the end it is confirmed that Teddy had regained his sanity and he was just pretending not to, so he'd be lobotomized because he didn't want to live with the knowledge that all of this shit happened in his life.
Yes, exactly.
Sad.
Right? It's a really sad ending. But yeah, so his partner, the psychiatrist, refers to him as boss a lot throughout the movie when he's kind of like just having a good time and talking to him like, "Okay, why do you think that, boss? What do we do next, boss?" But when he's serious, you notice him switch to Teddy, like, "Stop, Teddy, like, what are you doing, Teddy?" And then it's revealed his name isn't Teddy, right? It should be Andrew. And when they're trying to give him the reality check, they call him Andrew a bunch. They're like, "Andrew, you need to calm down. Andrew, you need to accept this." But in that last scene where he's going off to be lobotomized, essentially, his partner, essentially just Dr. Sheehan, essentially just calls out instinctually like, "Teddy," because he's serious, right? It's like a sad moment, and that's the name that he's come to know him as, even if it's not his real name, which is really sad. It'd be interesting in that last scene if he called out Andrew. Like, what would that would be very different, because we've heard Teddy throughout the movie. So I just thought that was an interesting name, or an interesting note, how names are used.
Well, I mean, I think it was because he was trying to see, basically, if he... like, Mark Ruffalo, after being asked that question about being a monster or a good man, I think he was unsure whether or not Teddy had regained his sanity,
Yeah.
and like was still playing into the whole thing. So he was like, I guess he's still
True.
crazy, maybe. So Teddy, but then he doesn't respond to that, and so he's like,
Oh, so that
oh shit.
confirms he's in his right mind. That's a good point too. Yeah, he doesn't respond to Teddy anymore.
Right, exactly. I think yeah. I mean, I don't know why he calls him Teddy instead of whatever. Like he's confused, whatever. But the point that matters is that Leonardo DiCaprio's character doesn't respond to his fake name anymore. So it's confirmed to the audience, like, oh, he just wants to be lobotomized, so he'll forget all this painful past. Now,
That's very true.
before you tell
Um,
me why you find this movie so scary, I want to ask: do you know how lobotomy works? I'm super confused. Like, how do you just like take part of like someone's brain out and they're still just like fine and okay? They're just kind of like zombified. Like, I'm very confused.
I actually don't know the technicalities of lobotomy either, but I think you've described it pretty accurately. I mean, you take out part of someone's brain, and in one way or another, they become much more docile, obedient. Um,
I guess I'm
and
just
so,
shook that over time medicine figured out which part of the brain like made someone more docile and was like figured out how to take that out without killing someone. Like that's I mean, progress, I guess. Medicine is cool, except this sucks,
dude,
but
the whole movie centers around how sad lobotomy is, and you're like, okay, but medicine for doing that? Kind of cool.
I mean, the alternative is, I guess, you have a bunch of. I mean, listen, I'm not pro lobotomy. I'm just saying, like, at the time, this is probably the best they could do. And it was definitely better than whatever the alternative was at the time, which could have been, like, I don't know, killing them? Who knows? Um, anyway, continue.
I mean, that is an interesting point. I think it's sad, though, that, I mean, our main guy, Teddy, I guess Andrew, didn't have, like, faith in himself to try and heal. And I think that's also the thing in the movie, is that it's just really sad the way it draws this line, like the insane versus the sane. I think that line is what puts people in such a down on themselves hard state of mind when they like struggle with mental health or like are struggling with one of these things. Suicide rates are much, much higher among schizophrenics than they are among, the portion of the population that hasn't been diagnosed with a mental illness.
Do
And I
you
think
think
it's
Martini Scorsese was trying to say, "Oh, well, a little crazy"? I don't know if he's from New York, but it just feels to me like he must be. Like, do you think
Martini
that's what he was trying to say?
Scorsese.
We're just all a little crazy, and that's the message of my movie.
I mean, I might hope, but I did. um, but I did have some more. Yeah, just I had a lot of thoughts about this in terms of. Were you done with what you were bringing up though?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So you asked, why I find this movie so crazy, and it is absolutely this idea or not so crazy, so scary, and it's absolutely this idea right at the beginning. A really good quote from Teddy when they walk into the asylum. The officers are instructing them like, you can't go into this ward, you can't do this thing. We're gonna need your firearms, da da da. And Teddy's like, you're acting like insanity is catching. Which is a really poignant line because you realize at the end that Teddy has not struggled with this stuff his whole life. It only happened after his wife had killed his children, right? He comes home, he's in his right mind, he's like, hey honey, like how's it going? And when he goes out into the back, he discovers that she's killed their 3 children. He kills her because I think that he just sees it as the only thing he can do, and she almost asks him to. And then proceeds to go through this entire saga of hallucinating for 2 years, essentially, so that he doesn't have to face his guilt. And towards the end, he does mention.
I mean,
his
not
guilt.
even his guilt, more just like, I mean, I guess guilt for killing his wife, but I think more the pain that his children and his wife, by extension of that, are dead.
Totally. And he mentions too. He's like, it's kind of. He says like it's my fault that they're dead because I didn't get her help because he didn't like acknowledge that she had a problem.
Well, I mean, if he feels like that falls completely on him, then yeah, I guess it is guilt.
yeah. I mean, it's a mix for sure, but I do. So in a way, insanity caught, right? It was his wife who was originally struggling, and then after everything that he's gone through, he now has to face that he also is not totally in his right mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, really scary. You know, when you see a crazy person, well, crazy person is such a, it's definitely not the right language I should be using. But when you see
We get
someone
it though. I mean,
who's
yeah.
struggling a lot, um, and especially someone who's just struggling to interpret their environment the way you would hope, right? Someone hearing voices, or someone who is
Mm-hmm.
overly paranoid and doesn't see that the people around them mean well, things like that, where they're not even totally in touch with like reality or what's going on. When you extend that and you say, well, I suppose that could happen to me, it becomes much more scary versus when you draw this line and you say, well, I'm sane and that's never going to happen to me, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes, what gives the movie a little bit more spook.
I mean, it's almost like a like a "Are we living in a simulation?" kind of feeling, right? Because at the end of the movie, you realize like, oh, this guy was crazy all along. He's been hallucinating the past 2 years of his life, and you almost have to turn around to yourself and be like, oh my god, am I at Shutter Island?
Exactly. It forces empathy exactly where you don't want to feel it.
Right.
um, yeah, exactly. It's really interesting, and I think the other interesting theme of the movie that that I brought up with this Nazi Germany parallel is like, how do you forgive the unforgivable? You know, if Teddy were
Mm-hmm.
at a place where he were better able to, and I say Teddy, it's so funny because that's just the name he has throughout the movie. If
Mm-hmm.
he were able to forgive himself in some way, or to come to peace, and realize, looking at all these other patients, like, oh, I suppose I could have some forgiveness for them because they were in the right mind and didn't know what they're doing, and now they're seeking help. Um, I feel like it would be much, much easier on him than when he has these really hardcore, when he's not able to forgive these kinds of offenses, which is super understandable, but it makes it a lot harder for him knowing that he's done something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if anything that factors into his final decision to get lobotomized, right? Because he's like, well, I mean, it's kind of like a it's kind of like a soft version of killing yourself almost, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you're no longer the same person after the procedure. So
Mm-hmm.
he's like, I killed all these people for doing all these heinous things. I guess I have to do the same thing to myself now because otherwise I'd be hypocritical. And since he can't forgive himself,
Mm.
he's like, it's my turn.
That's a good point too, with the hypocritical idea of him having killed all these people, and it's my turn. That's whoa. Okay, Andre, spot on analysis
I
there.
watched the movie, honey. No, I actually I remember I watched that movie, and a couple months later I saw like the book at a Barnes and Noble, and I was like, I'm gonna read that. And the book, as most books are when they're like translated into a movie, the book has more depth to it. Also, just like a longer, more detailed plot. But for the most part, I thought the movie did it justice pretty well. So I
Wow.
like the movie a lot.
Wow, Andre approved. I also like the movie a lot. And it's been listed on a couple of lists as one of the top movies of 2010, I'll say, although it got mixed reviews overall. Largely
I
positive.
mean, not a high bar to 2010 wasn't. This movie also has like a 60 something on Rotten Tomatoes, which, listen, Rotten Tomatoes critics definitely don't dictate everything that's good or bad, but I don't think they're completely like, out of whack. I mean, it's weird though because I mean I say that, but sometimes I actually do believe they are because like for example, I love Tron Legacy. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, and the movie
Mm-hmm.
has like a straight up 50% on Rotten Tomatoes, just like right down the middle, and I think it's a great movie. Similarly with this, actually, I think you know what I'm gonna defend it. I love Shutter Island. I thought it was great. I think Martin Scorsese really like can't make a bad movie. I've seen a lot of his movies. I I think it deserved a higher critic score, but
Wow.
whatever.
I mean, I would agree. And it's totally a matter of taste with a lot of these things, too. I think you're spot on with that. Um,
Yeah, I guess we like trash, and so now kidding.
no, what we
We're just
like
not refined
is
enough.
like emo shit where we have to think about our brains and whether we're in a simulation.
I mean, I think Mars Attacks is a masterpiece. So That's my taste. No, that's good. I mean, I like that. What was that your analysis? Was that your whole analysis?
That was pretty much my analysis. Let's see. I've got one more cool quote from the
Hmm.
warden who kind of represented, like, let's just lobotomize them all. He says, there is no moral order. It's just whether my violence conquers your violence. Um,
I mean,
just
yeah.
pretty interesting because he was, well, that's the thing. He was talking about all these violent inmates, and he was basically like, come at me, bro. Be violent with me if you want. And it was just interesting to see someone who clearly, like, reveled in violence, whereas Teddy hates it, right? But this warden, because he has self control and a somewhat decent grasp on his environment, isn't placed in there with the inmates, despite clearly being kind of scum. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
I think it's much more actions than thoughts, right? And I think that's kind of what sucks. Like,
yeah,
you can be a terrible person on the inside, but as long as you have the self control to not commit any crimes, well, I mean, you can't get penalized for being a horrible person.
totally.
Also, not like we would want that to be the case, because I do think there is a big like jump made from thoughts to actions, and we definitely don't want to live
Mm.
in Minority Report. So, yeah, like scummy Morton, but also I feel like that's the way things should be. um,
Yeah, I guess I agree. But I also do feel like some of our, um, I don't know, just a lot of the things that happen in law. Well, I could get on a whole tangent, but basically, if you're wealthy, you can get out of anything. Our law system is kind of corrupt.
if you have power and if you have more power than the opposition, basically, right? So like this
Yeah.
warden is in a position of power compared to the people living in the facility.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, whether that power comes from like influence, fame, money, it's
Hmm.
whatever. But it's about, yeah, you have power, you can get out of things that other people can't. That's totally true. I also like the quote. Can you repeat the quote to me?
Oh, yeah. There is no moral order. It's just whether my violence conquers your violence.
So what that made me think of was like morality is often dictated by victors. Like morality in society
Mm,
is often dictated by victors of like past
absolutely.
conflicts, right? So
Hmm.
like you have two groups of people. Whoever is more violent wins that conflict, and then they get to dictate what the society is going to look from there on, and that is taken by the people now living in that society as the moral code to follow.
Mm,
And I think that's
exactly.
really funny, right? Like for example, like we kill a bunch of animals in the West and we eat them,
Hmm.
and I guess so does the rest of the world. But for example, like India will do
Mm.
that, except what, like cows and
Hmm.
pigs.
Hmm.
So why why is that moral code different than ours? Well, because that was dictated by people that lived there a long time ago that must have like taken that space and started to live in it from potentially other people who were there before. What I'm saying is, like, if there
Mm.
were other people there and they came, and whoever they are, like, you know what I'm trying to say? They came and got rid of the other people, and they were like, "Well, now this is my." I mean, actually, super easy example. Just think of Native Indians here in the States, right?
Mm.
Like, we came, we took the land, and we were like, "Actually, no, this tradition, no, this that, no. We're definitely not gonna eat that, but we are gonna eat this. Like that. This is the new moral code. That's that."
Yeah, yeah.
And
You
it's
use violence and then you use it to justify your morality.
exactly, and we only got to set
Yeah,
that new morality because we were able to be more violent than the group that we defeated. So
totally
it's
true. Yeah,
yeah,
again, power connecting to the morals that you set up. Um,
yeah, pretty pretty sad shit.
yep.
Anyway,
And then we look at China eating dogs and we're like, wow, how could
I
you?
know, which I always think is like super hypocritical, because
Oh,
what's the difference
totally.
between a dog and a cow? Like, I mean, if anything,
Dude.
have you seen dogs and cows interact? Like, they're both playful. Cows are like big dogs, honestly. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, like, yeah. All in all, I definitely think like we're gonna, like, 150 years from now, hopefully less, but like 150 years from now, we're gonna look at like footage of humans eating meat, and we're gonna be like, God, we were like barbaric, like we were savages.
Oh,
Um,
totally. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I totally think that's where the world is going.
Hmm.
And it's just, you know what is really weird, to say that now and really
Hmm.
believe that that's gonna happen, and for me to still eat meat. that that's some kind of cognitive dissonance that is really out of this world. But it's also, you know what I mean? It's kind of fucked, and I know that.
Mm.
Um, Yeah, and like, and this also doesn't justify it, but the truth is that for me and a lot of people, it's like it's so ingrained in you to eat these foods because you've eaten them your whole life, that to quit them like presents so many difficulties that you'd rather just not put in the effort. And I know that sounds fucked, and maybe I'll get canceled in 150 years, but you know what I mean?
No, totally, totally. And the reality is that A, it's normalized, and norms dictate so much of our behavior, right? If you were shamed
Mm-hmm.
every time someone saw you with a hamburger, it'd be a different story. And
Mm-hmm.
B, we don't have to see the killing. You know, it'd be kind of
Mm-hmm.
inhumane if every time we ate a burger, we watched a cow get its like heart torn out and we watched it moan and fall to the ground. You know, I'm not sure that very many of us
I don't think that's
could
how
do
they
that.
kill cows, but
Oh yeah,
I don't
no,
think
that's,
they
that's
like.
definitely not. It's definitely like a slit of the throat. It's like a lot simpler. But
Right.
but if we had to watch that every time we ate meat, I think it would also be a different story. There are like a lot of circumstances that allow us to be like emotionally distanced from it enough, and like close enough to other people who are eating meat that you know it's
Oh
just
yeah, I
not
also
a
think that
super
allows us
big
to be less
concern.
respectful. Like you had
Hmm.
farmers back in, like I don't know, before industrialization, you had farmers who would like kill these animals and eat them. But it's almost like they really
They had to love that animal first.
exactly,
You had to say
exactly.
bye, Bessie.
Yeah, like factory farming makes it so emotionally distant not only for the consumer but also for the people working there because there are so many animals and to them they're all anonymous because there's so many and you can't get attached to any of them and it's just your job and your job is
Totally.
just to kill these animals that it's like you can't you have to like remove all attachment to be able to do your job that it's definitely not the same as like 200 years ago when like you killed your chicken to eat it like it's not
Totally,
like that.
totally. I'm imagining
um
like some kind of alien species coming to Earth, and we're like way less intelligent than them, and them
uh-huh.
doing the same thing with us, and a bunch of us like running naked around like some. I don't
Sunny.
know why it's so funny. And
Okay,
they just like number us. They're like, okay, number 67, and it's your turn
this is
today.
definitely this is definitely not the veganism episode. I don't know what's happening, but Sunny, you and everyone listening to this episode need to listen to a song called "Meat" by Poppy. You know Poppy, the weird YouTube girl. I
Mm.
don't know if you ever heard of her, but anyway, there's this girl. She makes music. Her name is Poppy. Poppy. She has a song called "Meat," and it's insane. The first time I heard it, I was so shook, but I loved it. The song is basically literally that. Like, it's this narrative of aliens coming to Earth and factory farming humans.
Oh shit! Look at that.
Yeah, yeah,
Poppy, same
it's
wavelength.
insane. This girl is creative, so it's
Mm.
good. It's also kind of like a metal song, so that makes it only that much more like hardcore, and I love it. Yeah, I don't know how I feel talking about this because trust me, I am totally aware of the hypocrisy. The like, I'm very much for for the vegan movement, and I very much am cognizant of how I think society will be in a century from now. Yet I'm
Mm.
still in this position where I eat what I eat every day. Um, that's humans for you. So
Yeah, it's
not
okay.
that not that I haven't tried, and that I'm still like not trying to decrease my consumption of animal products. I definitely am, and in the past I've definitely gone on like full on vegan. Um,
Mm.
but that only lasted as long as it lasted, so it was like a couple months at a time. But
Mm.
I'm
Hey,
definitely
you're
on
making that
this.
little difference here and there, though.
I'm definitely on this mind wave for sure. I've been for years actually. It's just that
Mm.
yeah, progress is
I
definitely
feel that.
non-linear when it comes to this.
I was
Um,
vegetarian when I first entered university, and then I gained the freshman 15, and I blamed vegetarianism, and I was like, fuck that shit, I need my body back. But then I did not lose the weight after stopping being vegetarian. I mean, I kind of eventually lost the weight after a long time, but not that it would concern me if I didn't. We love all bodies here. Mm.
yeah, but we also stand you as skinny queen. So I mean,
Um,
like last point I just want to make on this before I jump into my movie analysis
mm.
is everyone go watch factory farming videos. If they're gonna stun you, no pun intended, because they stun cows and shit. But
Mhm.
they'll definitely shock you, also no pun intended. And if they shock you into maybe not stopping to eat meat completely, but just to reduce your consumption of it because you feel not even just the guilt, but because you have that intellectual like knowledge now of like God, this is the process that it takes for this to get to my plate. If it even just
Mhm.
reduces your consumption, then those videos did their job, you know.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
even going vegetarian instead of vegan, it's actually my plan when I start working because I'm staying with family and I don't want to like dictate what they feed
Hmm.
me. But
Hmm.
it is my plan to be vegetarian because that's actually a lot easier. Like I don't think I can give up
Hmm.
milk and cheese and eggs yet,
Hmm.
but like I don't know, eating tofu instead of turkey is at least for me a reasonable step. But each person has to
Yeah,
decide that for themselves.
vegetarianism is awesome, especially as a stepping stone if you ever think you'll be vegan in the future, because like by just jumping into vegetarianism already, you yourself at least are not directly responsible for the killing of any animals. Like, you know, the treatment of these animals to get cheese and eggs and milk, also not fantastic, but no animals have to die for that, right? So
Mm.
there you go. And it's also better for the environment. It's also better
I
for your
love that
health,
this is where
frankly.
we got in our horror movie.
I know what happened. Anyway, hi all, welcome to Vegan Talk, episode one, um, with your hosts, two non-vegans. Okay, so I want to talk about Mother. Have you
Yes,
seen Mother, Sunny?
I have, but it was a while
Okay.
ago, so you might have to refresh me.
It was a while ago for me too, but I need no refreshment. This movie traumatized me. I remember it from beginning to end. I guess when I like experience hardcore trauma, I don't suppress it. It just really just stays there, ready to be accessed whenever needed.
We
It's
stand.
fantastic. Yeah, definitely not a Teddy. Um,
Ooh.
my prison cell is reality, honey. No, listen. So, I this plot is insane and also a little bit hard to explain in Shutter Island. So I'm gonna summarize a bit more than you for sure.
Okay.
But let's get into it. I was gonna try to like simplify some things. Okay, so basically, for those of you who have not seen Mother, or need a refreshment, Jennifer Lawrence is in this movie. It is directed. What's the name of this guy? Darren Aronofsky, if I remember correctly. Aaron Aronofsky, I think that's what it is. So, which funny enough, the director and Jennifer Lawrence actually dated for a while. After this
Whoa.
movie, yeah,
What is
they're.
that like?
I know. Weird. I bet because she actually said, and I pulled up this article about it. She said that after the movie came out, that she probably wouldn't want to make a movie like Mother ever again because it kind of traumatized her. So it's funny that she dated the director of the movie that traumatized her.
Damn.
Um, at least for a while. I was really interested to see also if they were still dating. Turns out no. She actually married late last year this artist. So good for her. He has like a
Yes,
galleria.
then you
Yeah,
go.
whatever. Anyway. I always thought her and Chris Pratt would make a great couple. If you haven't seen Passengers, you have to see that, but
Oh,
whatever.
I saw that. She was drunk for all of their love scenes, though.
Yeah, basically. That's just my ship though. But okay, so Mother. I don't know how to explain it. Here's the plot: you have this house that is all like burnt out and shit, and then you like at the beginning of the movie is this shot of this burned out house in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of this like beautiful field, I guess, and you see the house be slowly like recreated from burned ashes and remains to a normal looking house, and then you go into a
Mhm.
bedroom and the camera focuses on Jennifer Lawrence on the bed, and she wakes up and she's like him or whatever. Yeah, she calls her lover him the whole movie. So that already should be a clue that this movie is a biblical like allegory.
Mhm.
So she's like him, and then him comes into the room, and him is Jennifer Lawrence's like husband, and he's a writer, and right now he's experiencing writer's block, and so um and he describes Jennifer Lawrence as like his muse and whatever. So they live in this house. Great. So one day, a stranger referred to as Man turns up at the house asking for a room, and he claims to be a local doctor. And then him agrees to like house him in the house.
Mhm.
He's like, sure, okay. And then woman comes, a woman named Woman, who is a man's wife. Darren Aronofsky really said art. So he made this movie. Um, and then okay, so now you have these two guests that came out of nowhere. Great. Then you have man and woman accidentally shatter this like crystal object that is in him's like writing room, which he had forbidden anyone to touch. And so
Mm.
Mother kicks them out and him like boards up his study room. And but before man and woman can leave, their two sons arrive and fight over their father's will. This movie. Okay, yeah, okay. When you watch, I don't know if you remember, Sunny. You enter this movie theater and you have to watch this movie like you are on. You have to watch this movie from the fantasy plane, right? Like I always think that humans exist in the reality plane and also in the fantasy plane, depending on like the time of day, how creative they're feeling, what they're doing, you know, whether it's work or art, like their hobbies. Like I think like singers and stuff definitely exist much more on the fantasy plane of life, and that's something that I think a lot of people kind of shit on because it's like, oh, explain your art, this doesn't make sense. But I don't like that because I think like art sometimes shouldn't make sense and it should be seen exclusively as something ethereal and abstract.
I like this description, Andre.
Yeah,
this is pristine.
I don't like people that are. I don't like people that always insist on living in their reality plane because they think that that somehow puts them on some kind of like a high horse because it's like I am.
Totally.
It's like no, if anything, you are depriving yourself from this other facet of human life, which is just experiencing the abstract as abstract in itself, and that's that. There's no explanation behind it. I think that's good for humans to do every now and then because it gets your creative juices flowing and you don't just end up this like zombie. So anyway, I think artists exist mostly there. I think the rest of us exist mostly in the reality plane, but we try to escape to the fantasy plane, particularly with the art that these artists make for us. Anyway, this is all to say that Aronofsky definitely made a movie in the fantasy plane and also one that needs to be understood in the fantasy plane. Like I saw after watching this movie so many reviewers being like, what's this about, what does this mean, and what does this artistic choice mean? And I'm like you can't analyze art from the from the reality plane. That's like apples to oranges, you know what I mean? Like so I didn't like those reviewers. I thought this movie was great even though I hate it because it traumatized me. I thought it was great. Anyway, you have the sons of man and woman coming, fighting over their father's will, whatever. Then,
wait, so did man die?
No, man didn't die. The sons come to fight over the father's will, and then the oldest son, who finds out he'll be left with nothing of the will, severely wounds the younger brother and then flees. So definitely kind of like a, what's that like?
Cain and Abel.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So
also grew up in a Christian household, so any biblical references,
I'm sure you're gonna catch on to all of this. So him and man and woman take the injured son for help, and then mother stays alone in the house, and she like follows a trail of blood to find a tank of heating oil hidden behind the basement walls. And then upon returning, him tells mother that the son has died. Okay. And then dozens of people arrive at the house to honor the dead son. Like, okay, this is why this movie like fucks with your head so much because remember what I just said about the reality and the fantasy plane? Yeah. I realized you have to interpret this movie in the fantasy plane after watching it. While watching it, I was thoroughly confused. I knew it must have been some kind of biblical metaphor because I caught onto that pretty early on. But the thing is that, like, symbols and all, this movie still takes place in like this normal ass looking house with normal ass looking people, so you're very confused. You're like, wait, should I take this as like reality? Is this some kind of dream? Like, and then I started to question myself, like, I mean, I guess it's possible that some randos could arrive to your house and ask for hospice, like, I guess.
You're like, yeah, I mean, you could be named him and mother,
yeah,
and then
so
welcome in a woman and man, and then
for like half the movie I was still confused because I was still trying myself to interpret this from the reality plane. I was like, okay. I think after all the people, although just random people arrived to mourn the son's death, though, I was like, okay, this has to be entirely just some metaphor for something and not actually really what's happening. So people come and they do that, they honor the dead son, they behave very rudely, and this irritates the mother. And she snaps when they break a sink, which ends up partially flooding the house. And then she orders everyone out, and she like berates him for allowing so many people inside while ignoring her needs. Anyway. So then this argument ends in them like fucking. Okay. The next morning, mother announces that she's pregnant very fast. um, him loves this news, and this inspires him to finish his work because he had like writer's block, and then mother prepares for the arrival of the child and whatever, and then him like publishes his book, and it's like a sellout book. Like it sells out really great. And then in celebration of the book doing so well, mother prepares this big dinner, but a group of fans, a group of him fans, arrive at the house before they can eat, and she asks him to go away, but he like insists that he has to be polite and show his appreciation for his fans, and she tells her that he's gonna return soon, and like mother like tries to lock the door so more people keep arriving, and many like begin to use the toilet, which I thought was kind of funny. Like there's like a line for the toilet, and then they start stealing stuff around the house and like breaking shit, but him is like completely ignoring all this because he's too focused on like fan love. And then hundreds of people fill the house, like way more people come, and mother becomes like super disoriented, and this is where the whole movie just like devolves into absolute fucking chaos. Like military forces battle a cult of frenzied him fans who tear rooms apart and engage in religious rituals, and then you have like gunfire and explosions and shit, and then you have like mass executions happening. Which are organized by the Herald, who is the poet's publicist, him's publicist. This is like all happens in the span of like 10 minutes. It's a lot to take in. And then mother goes into labor, and she finds him finally, and him like takes her to her study so she can like have a baby. But then like there's more shit happening outside, and him tells mother that his fans want to see the newborn son, and mother's like, hell no. And then she falls asleep and wakes up, and she realizes like him took the baby because he wanted to show it to his fans. And she goes outside, sees the crowd like hanging out with the baby, but they're like passing the baby around wildly, and then like the baby's neck ends up being snapped. The mother's like, oh my fucking god. And then she like waits into the crowd, and she sees that people are eating her son's mutilated corpse. So lit. That's the part that to me was like, one, this movie jumped the shark, but I'm still very invested, and two, like traumatized me. So then she's like obviously super angry, and she calls everyone murderers and stabs them and shit, and then they turn on her and they beat her up, and they strangle her until him comes, and he implores mother to forgive them, but she escapes and makes her way to the basement oil tank and punctures it with a pipe wrench, the oil tank that she had seen earlier. And so she punctures that with a pipe wrench, and then despite him being like, no, don't do it, she like sets the oil on fire, and everything explodes, destroys the crowd, the house, everyone, the environment. Of course, her and him survive. She's completely burned and terrible, while him is like completely unscathed. And then he asks her for love, and she agrees. And then he tears open her chest and removes her heart. And as he crushes the heart with his hands, a new crystal object is revealed. So the crystal object that woman had accidentally broken earlier in the movie, that man and woman had broken accidentally, this like crystal like kind of pendant that him had in his study. Now there's a new one, and it's revealed to be just like mother's crystallized heart. And then him places it on this pedestal, and once again the house is transformed into this like burnout shell of a home, into this like beautiful home. And in bed, a new mother appears. It was like not played by Jennifer Lawrence. It's like some other woman, and wakes up, and she's like, "Him, where are you?" And then the movie ends. So it's like, did you catch all of that? It's a lot. So, and I try to summarize, mind you, but I needed to like hit every beat of that, because every beat of that represents some part of the biblical metaphor that Aronofsky was trying to go for this movie, right? So, okay. Basically, to dissect this pretty quickly, mother is Mother Earth. Men and women are men and women. Him is God. The people, the crowd doing shit are people. And they're like zealous because when they're presented with the baby, okay, so it's very confusing, right? Because like you think that baby is Jesus Christ, but according to some like analysis that I saw, and also just my own thoughts, I don't think that actually is supposed to represent that. I think it's just supposed to represent the gift of life and environment and like nature that Mother Earth gives to humans, and we like abuse it and tear it apart and cannibalize it and eat it, and then shit on it. And so and so I think that's what that is. Then when like Mother Earth is basically trying to escape her house slash save her house by killing everyone with like the oil tank, she's just trying to stop getting abused basically, which is a very like it's very understandable. And so she kills everyone, but in doing so she herself ends up harmed, and it's just so heart-wrenching that like then him will approach Mother Earth and be like, okay, but now that I've taken everything from you, I still want you to give me one more thing, love. And so she says yes, because she's so, she gives it all, I guess. And she gives him, it's very confusing, because it's like, okay, so does him really represent God? But whatever. She gives him her heart, and even that's torn out of her, and it's like, then everything is recycled and renewed, but old Mother Earth is just completely, like forgotten and means nothing, and she gave everything and now she means nothing.
Totally.
The allegory isn't very clear, because there are, again, things that kind of contradict each other and that aren't very clear, and even looking it up online you can't really understand all of this. You'd have to ask Aronofsky himself. But regardless of what him represents, like God or not, the focus, I think, for me is more on Mother Earth, and Mother is undoubtedly that character. There's no way that's definitely what she represents. There's no way it means anything else. So it doesn't matter.
I don't know,
really
though.
what you have. Go ahead.
Okay. I have thoughts, but first of all, I definitely think his source material was The Giving Tree.
Okay.
Do you know that book?
Yeah.
I just think this is adult Giving Tree. But okay. I don't want to interrupt because you seemed like you were on a roll. Do you have more?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I do feel like I could see this being, because you know how in the idea of like the Trinity with, God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit, there's not necessarily like a woman implied there, or like a feminine presence, I guess. So you can think about like the idea of Jesus being God's son, and then him being like the ultimate sacrifice who's like placed on the cross and whatnot. Like, what if Jesus had a mom, which he kind of does in the form of Mary, and I think that's why Mary gets a lot of hype. But what if he had like a God mom, and would she let male God like just destroy their son for humans who kind of suck anyway? I guess like just the idea of love for the ones that are close to you versus love for like humanity as a whole, even though humanity kind of sucks. But I just think it's an interesting take on it, and thinking about like a mother's love. Like, I feel like most mothers would save their own baby over, a decent amount of people that they don't know.
I mean, yeah, but I just think that the fact that the movie keeps the characters' names and the plot so incredibly just bizarre and abstract makes me think that this must be about Mother Earth. And specifically, like, okay, hot take. I think Mother is, like, climate change viewed from Mother Earth's perspective. Like, I think that's the story, basically. Or at least politically, that's what Aronofsky was trying to put out. I mean, and how could that... I especially think that's true just because of the times, right? Like, I mean, this movie was made in recent times. Like, I think it's very poignant. I definitely think he drew inspiration from The Giving Tree. Because
I said that as a joke, but I love that you...
No, for real, though, for real. Like, yeah, like, okay, yeah, it's a children's book, but it, it's like really the way that humanity like, keeps taking and taking... Yeah. Like, I think it's very... I mean, I don't know if he, like, drew from that consciously or not, but whatever. I definitely see inspiration there. Yeah. Yeah. Like, I don't have all the answers. This movie is very confusing, but I definitely think it is about Mother Earth being abused, and more in more modern terms, specifically through climate change. I don't see how it could be about anything else. Yeah. Good ass movie though. I definitely recommend it. I definitely recommend for everyone to watch it once, and that's it, because you're gonna hate it afterwards. But I think it's definitely something to be experienced.
Yeah, the ending with this cycle too is very interesting. That he uses a different actor to be Mother the next time. That's really interesting, because in cyclical things, you would expect it to just be a regenerated Jennifer Lawrence. But I think that possibly the point there too is that we're on this search for a new planet that can sustain life. Like, I feel like that's a big thing going on, and people are like very excited. So it's cyclical in nature in that we would probably just destroy another Earth even if we had it, but not cyclical because we won't be able to use the same planet because it will be dead.
I had not thought about that. That like the new woman could be like Mars. That is, yeah. I mean, it would make sense why it's a different actress. Something I also want to point out is Aronofsky seems to really love the Bible because he also made the movies Noah and Pi. Yeah, so he loves like drawing for biblical stories and like religious
Grandiose
symbolism.
director.
Yeah, so yeah, he definitely loves that. I I was gonna say like the aspects about this movie that I'm still confused about, but I don't think we have enough time. I don't want to go into this also because it's just frustrating, and I feel like I'm just gonna like talk myself into this hole, and I'm just gonna like rant forever. Point is, there's still some things about this movie that I don't understand, read as I might. But everyone, stop littering. That's the episode.
Go vegan and stop littering.
Go vegan
Welcome
and
to
stop
Earth
littering.
Talk.
Welcome to Earth. Oh my god, dude, we have Earth Talk, Vegan Talk, Psych Talk, and Scary Talk. We're so prolific.
We really are. The amount of things that we cover in this horror podcast.
I know. Well, everyone, that's the episode. God, we went long on these movies. We really like went in.
We really did. Yeah, I had another one prepared, but it looks like we're out of time.
This shall be part 3, yo. Everyone, thank you for listening. Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any episode ideas for future episodes, please do let us know by DMing us at Talk Scary on Instagram and Twitter, or at Scary Talk on our Facebook page. Remember that you can listen to us on all podcast listening platforms, be it Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, etc. Sunny, anything else?
In terms of from scary talk to mental health talk, remember to be forgiving and love yourselves and people around you the way that Teddy couldn't, because that's all that you can ask of yourself or anyone else. That's all.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, we love you all. Thank you for listening. Stay spooky and go vegan, I guess. Bye.